universal depth, even though the scale of the impact and the size of the crater can be massively different. The depth is about the same, really, within a very short ratio, and that's, the scientists say, because it goes into the outer layer, the kind of buffer, but it can't go further than this inner protection layer that is impregnable. This guy, Don Wilson, wrote a book in the 70s called Our Mysterious Spaceship Moon, and these are some of the anomalies that he lists, and there are others that can be explained by what we're talking about. Why the moon is a freak world, too big and too far out to be a natural satellite of Earth. Why the moon has such shallow craters. Why some moon rocks are older than Earth and as old, at least, as the solar system. Why the moon seems inside out. Why the moon vibrates like a huge gong, transmitting tremors great distances around and through itself. How the moon can produce so many contradictions of data and findings. And I think it was in 2001, there was a series of people who spoke at the National Press Club in Washington, who were insiders of government projects and space projects, etc., who came out to give evidence on things that they saw and were covered up and have never come to light. And one of them was this man, Sergeant Carl Wolf. He was a precision electronics photographic equipment engineer based at the Langley Air Force Base in Virginia. That's the CIA Air Force Base. One of the planes in 9/11 flew out of that and never got there, weren't meant to. But what he told at the press club was that he was called across to part of this base where they were putting together what they called mosaics. As the craft were flying over the moon and photographing it, they were taking different photographs and piecing them together to complete the landscape. And they had a technical problem, so he went over to try to help them out with it. And then a guy there who was working with his mosaics showed him something of interest. And this is what he said at that presentation in Washington. Then he pulled out one of these mosaics and showed this base, which had geometrical shapes that were towers. They were spherical buildings, they were tall towers and things that looked somewhat like radar dishes, but they were large structures. If I compare it to what I have seen now, because I do have photographs that have artifacts in them that are similar to what I saw, they're massive. And this is a thing, you think about the moon, massive. This is a thing that comes up. The structures and technology and, if you like, spaceships that these people work with, some of them are absolutely enormous, beyond our comprehension, because they've crossed that Rubicon of understanding how reality works and therefore what possibility is. Some of these structures are half a mile in size. They're huge structures. Some of the buildings seem to have very reflective surfaces on them. A couple of structures that I saw reminded me of cooling towers at power generating plants. They had that sort of shape. Some of them were just very, very straight and tall with a flat top. Some of them were round. Some of them looked like Quonset huts and with a dome, a kind of like a greenhouse. The particular shot that I saw, there were several clustered together over the landscape, a fairly large landscape. And other people at that press club presentation talked about how NASA systematically smudged out or removed any non-natural artifacts that they showed on the surface of the moon. And this documentary called Moon Rising, you can watch it on YouTube, I think, looked at photographs taken by something called the Clementine mission in 1994, I think it was, which took 1.8 million photographs, digital photographs of the moon. And you see the way that some things on the landscape were just blocked out. I mean, what's behind this? There's loads of these things which they've blocked them out, and then there's this, which has been smudged out. If you take it from another angle, there it is. What the heck is that? One of the kind of astounding things in this documentary is that they said they took this picture to a photographic expert who's worked with NASA, and he estimated that this was 10 times the size of Los Angeles. Because you're dealing with phenomenal understanding of how to create this technology. Because of the understanding of reality. And whatever it is, it certainly doesn't seem to be natural. You've got all these other things kind of smudged out, and you can only see even the smudging in close-up. And what I came across when I was putting this together is the Death Star in Star Wars. Now, George Lucas, as I've been saying in my books for years, is a massive insider in a galaxy far, far away. I don't think so. I don't think so. This is much closer to home. And, of course, in the Star Wars movies, the Death Star it looks very much, of course, like the moon, and it was constructed to move in on planets and take them over in the same bloody way that I'm talking about in relation to the moon, and there's more to know too. In many ways, this is so symbolic of what we're looking at here, and that's no accident with George Lucas involved. And interestingly, this is Mimas, a genuine moon of Saturn, and there's the Death Star. I found that quite interesting when you put them together. Anyway, there was also talk, and more recently there's been further talk in the last few weeks, that one of the moons of Mars, Phobos, is a hollowed-out asteroid. This guy said a long time ago, in '63, chief of applied mathematics at NASA, that Phobos might be a colossal base orbiting Mars, and like I say, that's come back into the debate that it could be. And again, one of the Star Trek episodes was about a hollowed-out planetoid that became, in effect, a spacecraft, a world inside it. And so much of this science fiction that puts this stuff in our face as fiction ain't fiction at all. They're getting it from fact. So, like I say, there's not just incredible synchronicity in mathematics and size and position between these three bodies, but as the authors of Who Built the Moon point out, there's great synchronicity between things like Stonehenge and other megalithic structures and these three bodies, particularly the moon. And one of the things they point out is that the measurement, which a guy called Alexander Thom came up with, an engineer who studied all these sites in Britain and Europe, like Stonehenge, called the megalithic yard, which is a kind of a certain length. And he said that all these major, especially Stonehenge and things like that, broke down into these megalithic yard mathematics. And what the authors of this book are saying is that the moon breaks down to the same mathematics, which is what they say. This all seemed very odd. The megalithic structures that were built across Western Europe were frequently used to observe the movements of the sun and the moon. But how could the unit of measure upon which these structures were based be so beautifully integer to the circumference of these bodies as well as the Earth? Well, maybe because those that built Stonehenge and these megalithic structures in the ancient world, some of which we'd struggle to build now, were also those controlling the moon. And okay, this could be controversial, but, you know, I've been known to be. I think that these structures were put there to suppress the Earth's energy grid for reasons I'll come to in a moment, because we are interacting with this energy field all the time. And how do you control all the fish at once? You control the sea they're swimming in. And the way to control humanity and suppress humanity is to suppress the energy field and the energy and information available in that field that we can access. And these fantastic structures were not done by humans alone, let's say that. Now this is where I am probably alone for the moment. I don't think I will be forever, but there you go. When I was, I do this more in detail in the book, but I'm trying to connect dots here. What I came across when I was putting all this together, again, was something I've termed the moon matrix. The first section today is absolutely crucial to understanding how this can work. The moon matrix is a broadcast frequency coming from the moon, which has, in effect, hacked in to the human body computer and to the virtual reality universe in general, and has created a sub-reality within the wider virtual reality. Because, I keep saying it, but it's important, we see the moon as physical, but actually its base construct, like everything else in this reality, is waveform information. And I would say, and of course I think this is going to become more obvious as the years pass, I would say the moon is actually not just what we've talked about so far, but it's an interdimensional portal through which entities and energies can come out of one reality through into this one. It's their means of entry. Its position, so perfect, as you'll see if you read not just my new book, but Who Built the Moon. Its position in relation to the moon and the sun is so perfect because that has an effect on creating this sub-reality. I'm saying that this frequency is broadcast from the moon and has created a sub-reality which we are constantly decoding, and that the genetic manipulation of humanity, so widely described by the ancients, was to take this body computer and tune it in, connect it to this frequency range I'm calling the moon matrix. This is Neil Haig's concept of moonopoly. This is the world, the structure that we are experiencing. This box recurring round and round limited world. And I am suggesting that we are being massively influenced. In fact, we have been turned into a hive mind by these broadcasts, which are holding us in a sense of limitation, to the point where it operates as a default mechanism. Soon as you start to awaken, if you don't keep it going and stick with it, then you'll default back, because the pressure of this moon matrix is pushing us into this tiny sense of limitation. So what virtual realities do is they basically hijack the five senses and get them to decode the information in the computer game and take it into reality. I'm saying that this moon matrix has done exactly the same, and it is part of the modus operandi of how planets are taken over in this way. Our five senses have been locked into something else, and we're decoding a fake reality. Basically, we are connected to this symbolically, which is a hive mind, which is why we are so herd-like when we weren't before. And if people are going, "Whoa, okay, what?" Just stick with me, because the layers will go on. What I've been talking about today is the fact that this base vibration from the black holes goes through this cycle, and it elicits different information in the form of photons from the suns, which we decode, and the reality changes. We go through different epochs. What I'm saying is that this moon matrix has hacked in to that photon energy stream and has done what the Chinese authorities have done to the computer system in China. They have stopped us accessing vast amounts of the virtual reality universe that we used to before. Now, if anyone thinks this is fantastic, that we could see things that aren't really there and not see things that aren't there, this is a New Scientist. America has just switched from analog to digital television. In the short time of about a year that the analog frequencies are not being accessed because they're going to be filled up by other things like mobile phones, suddenly, for the first time, scientists can see and connect with radio waves from galaxies they couldn't before. Why couldn't they do it before? Because we were watching the flipping telly. Prior to the switchover in America, naturally occurring radio waves at frequencies between 700 and 800 megahertz were obscured by analog TV signals, preventing astronomers from investigating the universe using this band. The freeing up of this bandwidth is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to see galaxies in this range. Now, you imagine what is capable by this high technology in blocking frequencies so we can't perceive what's there and we perceive things that aren't there. That's what this is doing, I suggest. And I'll add more detail as we go along. In effect, we're operating within a bubble, a virtual reality bubble, within the wider virtual reality universe. And it's connecting in through our crystalline receiver transmission system, same with the Earth, and creating this situation where we are decoding a world that may even not be there, who knows, but certainly is different to the world we think it is. And we go back to this more accurately now. The matrix, I would say the moon matrix, is everywhere. It is all around us. Even now in this very room, you can see it when you look out of your window and you turn on your television. You can feel it when you go to work, when you go to church, when you pay your taxes. It is the world that has been pulled over your eyes to blind you from the truth. What truth? You are a slave